Welcome to the second webinar in the Healing from Trauma webinar series. If you haven't viewed the first webinar in this series, The Impact of Trauma, please consider watching it before viewing this webinar. I'd like to start by acknowledging the original custodians of the land on which I'm recording this webinar and the lands on which you are watching. I'd also like to pay my respects to elders past and present and welcome all Aboriginal people. My name is Alison. I'm a senior psychologist with the Links Training and Support Team with the Department of Communities and Justice. In this webinar, you'll learn about kids' trauma responses and being a detective to identify their trauma triggers. We'll also explore working with the child support team to prevent survival responses. The information in this webinar relates to kids of all ages, from infants to adolescents. Please note that I'll be talking about topics that may be difficult. It's important to look after yourself as you watch and be aware of any feelings that arise. If needed, press pause and come back at a later time when you're feeling more able to focus. If you find any topics particularly difficult, please reach out and talk to a support person, your caseworker, or manager. Be aware that there are 4 webinars in this series, which you can find on our website. Your learning will be best supported by watching all 4. In our last webinar, you learned that the majority of kids in out-of-home care have experienced complex trauma. These early life experiences can significantly impact upon kids' development, as much of the brain's wiring occurs when we're very young. Experiences of trauma can lead to challenges in emotional, psychological, physical, social, and educational growth. When kids focus on survival, they miss out on important childhood experiences. Things like play, learning how to trust, making friends, building attachments, and the ability to learn are all compromised when kids are focused on just trying to stay safe. But kids who have experienced trauma can and do get better. Research shows that our brains can be rewired even in adulthood, meaning the impact of trauma on brain functioning does not have to be permanent. The older we get, the more difficult this becomes, so it's vitally important to act early and begin healing in childhood. To facilitate this healing, kids who've experienced trauma need to form meaningful and positive connections with others. Carers and caseworkers are extremely important in this process, as consistent adults allow kids to feel safe and supported. Behaviour is a powerful communicator. To best support kids experiencing survival responses, it's important to understand what their behaviour is telling us. Trauma is not the cause of all problem behaviour. However, if we ignore kids' trauma histories and the possibility of a trauma response, we risk missing powerful drivers of emotional and behavioural challenges. Let's look at how trauma impacts kids and their behaviour. This is Jayden. From the age of 2, Jayden's father would put lit cigarettes out on his body to discipline him. Throughout his childhood, Jayden's mother would often hit him with a belt when he didn't complete tasks fast enough. Last year, at the age of 12, Jayden was placed with foster parents. Since his placement, concerns have been reported about Jayden's behaviours. Recently, Jayden was suspended from school in relation to a maths test. Time ran out before he could finish. When Jayden found out he would not be able to complete the test, he swore at the teacher, threw a pen at her, and stormed out of the classroom. As Jayden left, he pushed another student against the wall. Jayden's foster mother has also reported behaviours at home, including an incident on the weekend. A family friend who is a heavy smoker came to visit the home and wanted to shake Jayden's hand. When Jayden refused, his foster mother tried to encourage him and ended up raising her voice in frustration. Jayden became furious, put his fist through a wall and left the house for the rest of the night. Think about Jayden's story. Can you identify his trauma history, survival responses, and triggers? Jayden experienced complex trauma, having been abused by his primary caregivers from a young age. He is displaying a fight response, like punching a wall, swearing, throwing objects, and pushing a classmate. He also displays a flight response when he leaves the classroom and house. Now let's think about triggers. Being unable to complete the test at school possibly reminded Jayden of punishments for not completing tasks fast enough. The smell of cigarettes may have reminded Jayden of his father putting cigarettes out on him. Both of these reminders triggered survival responses in Jayden. For kids who have experienced trauma, triggers are the signals of danger they've learnt through exposure to traumatic events. Triggers signal to a person that there's something dangerous in their environment, with the brain alerting the body to respond quickly. The more frequently kids have experienced danger, the quicker a trigger will result in a survival response. Eventually, survival responses will be activated in the absence of actual danger. Triggers come in many shapes and sizes, but generally fit into one of three categories: sensory, time-driven, or conditional. Sensory triggers include smells, sights, sounds, tastes, and sensations. Time-driven triggers might relate to anniversaries, holidays, seasons, or particular times such as meal or bath times. Conditional triggers include things like loss of control, being told no, or transitioning from one activity to another. When kids respond negatively to a trigger, they're not being willfully defiant, disrespectful, or wanting to cause trouble. The responses are about surviving in the moment. Sometimes triggers are obvious, but others can be extremely difficult to detect. It's important to work with others to understand what might be triggering survival responses. Trauma behaviours can be understood in 4 stages. These are chilled, heating up, boiling, and cooling. How kids act and experience their bodies depend on the stage of behaviour they're in, and so should our responses. When kids are chilled or regulated, their heart rates are in the normal range and the complex parts of their brain are working well. They have an internal state of calm and can sit quietly in a classroom, concentrate, play happily, eat a pleasant family meal, or complete their household tasks. They're able to manage their emotions and behaviours. But then a trigger appears. They quickly become hypervigilant, shifting their focus to the perceived source of threat. Their bodies start to prepare for a survival response. Their heart and breathing rate increase, and muscles start to tense. Emotions expand. This is called heating up. If they cannot calm down and no one else can help them to feel safe, they may escalate quickly to a survival response. This is called the boiling stage. In this stage, kids are at the greatest risk of harming themselves or someone else. It is also in this stage that kids may be unaware of what they or others are doing, meaning they might not be able to remember all or some of the details later. Eventually, when the perceived danger has passed, they will enter the cooling stage. Here, they can begin to manage their emotions and settle back into their environment. This can be a particularly vulnerable time, with kids easily re-triggered as they calm. Look at the image of the cooling volcano on the slide. You'll notice that the lava is still present. This illustrates that the danger hasn't quite passed and reminds you to stay vigilant during this time. Now let's talk about some common behaviours in each of the 4 stages. It's important that you can identify and link the behaviours you see to the stage kids are in. This will make it easier to respond appropriately. We'll start with chilled. When kids are in this stage, they might appear calm, happy, and even-tempered. It's likely that they'll be able to focus on an activity and cooperate with you and your instructions. When kids begin to heat up, you may notice physical changes such as clenched fists, an increased rate of breathing, and shuffling feet. Their facial expressions might become tense. They might glare or make no eye contact. You may also see heightened emotions or a raised voice. Alternatively, they might stop talking and begin to check out. Boiling behaviours are the most difficult to manage. Kids often become angry or agitated and may use verbal or physical aggression. They might show high levels of anxiety and fear or become guarded and defensive. They may also withdraw or shut down completely. When kids are cooling, you'll see that they're beginning to calm down, manage their emotions and become quieter. They might show signs of feeling guilt or shame. They could isolate themselves or become responsive to you. Remember, all kids are unique, and identifying how they respond in each stage will help others support them effectively. In kids who've experienced trauma, we often see a pattern of change in their affect, awareness, and action. Affect is the way kids display their feelings through facial expressions or body language. Awareness refers to a kid's sense of what's going on around them, and action is how they behave. These changes give you clues about what is happening in their brains and bodies, letting you know when trauma responses are occurring. You should pay attention to these clues as they tell you when kids require support. It's important to know if affect, awareness, and action change within the same behaviour. This is likely to indicate a survival response. Let's meet Sally and look at her shift in the 3As. Sally is in Year 3 and attends her local primary school. Yesterday, Sally was in the classroom happily doing her work when the kid sitting next to her yelled at her friend outside. Sally stopped her work and stared intently at the child, blocking her ears and crying. Then she stood up and ran from the classroom. In this instance, Sally has had a survival response. She has focused her awareness on the screaming child. She started to cry, indicating a change in emotions, and she went from sitting doing her work to blocking her ears and running from the room, which is a significant change in behaviour. Take a moment to think about the kids you support. Have you seen shifts in the 3As? During a dangerous situation, survival or fight, flight, freeze responses provide the emotions and actions a person needs to survive. For kids in out-of-home care, survival responses may be activated even when they are not needed. Simple reminders of past danger can produce survival responses in kids. Responses that were once helpful can now cause significant problems for them. They can interfere with their ability to learn or participate in everyday activities. Responses that help kids in an abusive or neglectful environment may be extreme or completely unnecessary in a safe environment. Think about Jayden and his boiling behaviours. Jayden grew up in a home where his mum and dad were often violent towards him. This shapes his responses to many things. Despite being in a safe, caring home for over a year, Jayden continues to throw objects, punch the wall, push others, and run away when he doesn't feel safe. Kids' brains need time to create new pathways. Simply putting them in safe, supportive environments is not enough. They need positive, responsive, and nurturing parenting to change neural pathways, and this process takes time. We want kids to see their environments are not hostile and that the people in them will help and support them. We're not trying to make kids perfect, but we do want to support them to build resilience. We're now going to explore the concept of child support teams. Those supporting kids in care should work together to understand why kids are responding the way they are and how carers and caseworkers can help. This is known as a child support team and can include any trusted adult present in a kid's life. The idea is that these adults share information and insights about the child's behaviour to identify triggers and develop effective interventions. Carers, caseworkers, and kids, depending on their age and ability, should discuss who might fit in their support team. You might consider family members, friends, professionals, and community members that care about the child or teen. You are a key member of this team, vital to noticing and identifying trauma triggers. With your help, the team can plan for times when additional support may be required. We know that positive outcomes are more likely when help is sought earlier rather than later. Child support teams work on the premise that kids do not live in isolation. There's a vast network or environment around all kids, including home, school, family, and social or cultural communities. Just asking what has happened to kids is not enough. We need to understand the wider context and create a safe environment for them. This is why trauma-informed care focuses on helping kids more effectively manage survival responses by building their coping skills and creating an environment that reduces trauma reminders and increases feelings of connection and safety whenever possible. When supporting kids who've experienced survival responses, we must act like a trauma detective to observe their reactions, identify triggers, and record the patterns or trends we see. You need to find out what's going on for them and why. Part of being a trauma detective is thinking about kids and their behaviours. You might consider how they respond to different levels of light or noise, how they respond to touch, certain activities that they will give up on or quickly or avoid altogether, repeated behaviours, their strengths and things they enjoy, and the times they seem happiest or most calm. You should share this knowledge with the child support team to help determine appropriate responses and supports. Understanding kids' trauma experiences helps you to identify potential triggers. Think back to Jayden. Knowing that Jayden's father disciplined him by putting out lit cigarettes on him helps us understand his strong reaction to the smell of cigarettes. Without that knowledge, we might have assumed he was being rude or disrespectful by refusing to shake hands. Having and sharing information about kids' trauma histories helps others to understand their trauma patterns. While knowing about survival responses and trauma histories is important, kids who've experienced trauma also have incredible strengths that are highly adaptive. It's vital to identify, understand, and share these strengths with the child support team. You play a powerful role in the lives of kids you support. You can model loving, supportive, and regulated behaviour. You can build strong connections, ensuring they feel safe enough to ask for help when feelings threaten to overwhelm them. It's important to provide a safe, predictable, and consistent environment for the kids you support. That's what helps them to stay regulated. However, we need to be mindful of how and when to help kids who may be struggling. Remember, we are always trying to prevent the shift to boiling if we can. We'll look at ways to do this in our next 2 webinars. Thank you for watching webinar 2 in the Healing from Trauma series. In our 3rd webinar, we'll introduce you to 2 tools. These will help you identify survival responses, triggers, and shape your responses. We'll look at strategies including predictability and consistency to create nurturing environments for kids who've experienced trauma. You'll also learn skills in responding to patterns of emotional and behavioural challenges. On our website, you'll find all webinars in this series and a range of other resources. If you'd like more information on trauma, you may benefit from attending Healing from Trauma training. If you're a carer, talk to your child's caseworker about training opportunities. If you work with kids in out-of-home care, speak to your manager, internal psychologist, or therapeutic specialist. Thank you.